Dungeon Master!
You know, superhero role-playing games seem to have a really bad rap. Some of my favorite YouTube game reviewers, like Spoony and Kurt Weigel over at GamePug Pro, I forget the name of his channel, they said superhero games look better on paper than they actually come out in real life. And pish posh and phooey say I. I've run fantastic supers games. I'm an avid role player and also a comic book fiend, so maybe I'm in a rare position that way. The most common mistakes made when running a supers game to me seem to be running them like they were a dungeon crawl. Supers games work on a much bigger physical scale and a much smaller scale morally. Strap yourself in, I'm about to reveal to you 10 tips for running a great supers game. Keep it simple. Start your players with low to mid-level characters with 3 to 4 powers each. That seems to be the magic number. Don't itemize tech characters' gadget, just give them Omni gadget. It saves everyone a lot of headaches. In other words, don't make a stat for every single one of Bruce Wayne's batarangs. Tip 2, beware problem powers, especially invulnerability and super speed. Be careful of these two. These powers can cause trouble even at low levels. You don't want to always have a special weapon available for the one player with bulletproof skin. In a lot of the older systems, super speed is super broken, so test it out before you hand it out. The best setting is an alternate version of an established universe. In comic books, there are many versions of the DC and Marvel universe. I suggest you claim one of those Uncharted ones for your campaign. It gives you and your players common ground where many of the rules of the universe are already known. It saves you from having to reinvent the wheel, like you're gonna have to have an agency like S.H.I.E.L.D. or Checkmate. Why not just use S.H.I.E.L.D. or Checkmate? Batman and Spider-Man also have a lot more clout than Captain Combat and Onion Man. If you want to make original characters too, that's fine. Go ahead and let your players do likewise. Simple plots about grand-scale dangers are your best bet. Hollywood blockbusters are made of this kind of stuff. A mystery person is killing off all the mutants. A recently discovered mummy calls the evil god Set back to Earth. 2 warring tribes of robot aliens bring their battle to Earth. An asteroid is heading to Earth. Can your players keep things under control long enough for scientists to come up with a solution? A zombie infection is spreading in New England. Can your heroes seal off East Coast cities and find the biologist whose research may provide the vaccine? The Rapture is good. An island full of dinosaurs is good. Stick to the 4-act structure. Act 1, establish the characters. Give them something to do that's seemingly unrelated to the main story. Maybe they can work with their NPCs, their families, whatever they do in their secret identity. And maybe the characters, for example, the characters are saving an island nation from an unusual tsunami. Then, Act 2, you establish the threat. The tsunami was caused by an early chunk of massive meteor headed toward the Earth. Act 3. Act 3, you have the plot twist. The scientist in charge of building shelters in the Earth has in fact been communicating with the asteroid, which is not merely a rock, but an evil alien intelligence. He has sold the human race out for power. In Act 4, let the heroes find a solution. You shouldn't have to spoon-feed it to them. The meteor being is weak from travel, but if it absorbs biomass on Earth, it'll be unstoppable. Maybe the heroes can redirect it to land in a desert or in the Antarctic, slow it down so the explosion isn't that great, or maybe the heroes fly into space to confront the being head-on. If it's remotely plausible, let it work out for them. Here's some gameplay tips. Broader action. In 99% of RPGs, most of your action is going to be combat. Maybe it's combat during a chase, or maybe it's while overcoming a physical obstacle like a shaky bridge or a mountain, but when the talking ends and it's time for an action beat, someone's getting stabbed. However, in a supers game, a straight-up fight should be a rare thing. Common thugs don't want to mix it up with superheroes, and supervillains rarely believe in fair play. Characters that are weaker or simply evil will often find ways to divide the party's attention in order to gain an advantage, and that's okay for a party of 5 mid-level superhumans. They can handle almost anything, especially if the party's balanced. Don't be afraid of throwing too much at them. It's almost impossible to do, and it certainly makes combat a lot more fun. For example, combat should include rescuing civilians, securing dangerous items like gasoline trucks, and protecting structures. Damage control during natural disasters or controlling panicking crowds and other huge-scale events can also be opportunities for action in a supers game. Let comic book logic prevail. A radioactive blast would probably just give the citizens of Newark leukemia, but it's far more fun if they mutate into faceless, life-sucking monsters. Buildings can't really be held up without crumbling. Catching someone who fell out of a plane would kill them. There's no organized crime families made up of ninjas, but this stuff is the meat and potatoes of comic books. Leave it alone. Don't neglect secret identities. They allow characters to use different skill sets and playstyles. Using your powers in a bright red costume is good fun. Using them while dressed like a bookish nerd is awesome. Give your players a break from cruising the city. Show them there's an entire world of parties and courtrooms and auction houses that don't involve socking a guy dressed up like a venomous insect in the jaw. Keep Google handy. The modern world is detailed and complex. When PCs want to know about geography and culture, you can't just pull an answer out of the air like you might in a fantasy game. I keep a list of what different street objects and vehicles weigh handy. Lastly, get used to saying yes. There's often a lot of pressure in Supers games to come up with a solution to a variety of problems, but Super characters rarely have as broad a bag of tricks as a group of fantasy characters might. Give your players a little more leeway than you would in D&D. If they come up with a novel use for their power, also known as a power stunt, don't be so quick to shut it down. If the weather controller thinks she can start a car with a small lightning bolt, let her try. In the same vein, don't punish your players for botched rolls as much as you might in D&D. Let me give you an example. In one of my games, I had a party of 6 heroes break into a building that was being robbed. Now, everyone made their stealth roll except for Batman. Now, I wasn't going to have Batman be caught by the Riddler, because he was too loud. So instead, I had him break through glass and draw fire while everyone else snuck into the building. You want to maintain that larger-than-life atmosphere and tone. Supers game can slip into farce very quickly. So when your characters mess up, play it off as a choice, or all of these tips are for people who are looking to get into a Supers game for the first time. If you've already got a Chronicle going, and it's going well, and it's written differently than what I've described here, or you're a little harsher, maybe you're going for a grittier experience, maybe you're more influenced by writers like Morrison and Moore who break away from the norms of superhero fantasy, then great. Maybe there's something here you can take. If not, that's fine. But for beginning players, I think if you stick with this stuff, you'll find that you won't stray too far from what the intention of these games are. And a lot of people miss that their first time out. Games that aren't Dungeons & Dragons like Shadowrun and Cyberpunk, they have that same sort of mercenary feel of acquiring wealth and combat, and that isn't really what these games are about. Supers games have a vibe all their own, and once you played a few of them and you get the feel for it, you'll realize that. But first time out, give these guidelines a try. Let me know how it works for you. This is the Fungeon Master signing off.